With a demand of vintage timepieces steadily on the rise, it might be tempting to go out and spend big dollars on a notable brand. Luckily, the vintage marketplace is teeming with undervalued timepieces from big names and forgotten brands alike. So regardless of your price point, starting a vintage collection is now easier than ever. There's a reason most watchmakers today are reissuing their designs of vintage dive watches. The things we like are faded rotating bezels and puffy loom dials that have gained an even fine patina over time. Most dive watches have a date display, but I think it's a real treat if you can find one without one. Just a simple, vintage utility piece. A good example would be the Tudor Submariner 94010 Snowflake. But of course, there are other affordable alternatives. Military watches have always had a prominent place among watch collectors. Whether it's an aviation chronograph or a field standard watch. Models made from the 1940s through the 1960s are widely available, some more rare than others, but definitely a piece of history on the wrist. You can find a vintage military piece from the majority of the notable brands out there. For seasoned vintage collectors, you can't go wrong with a vintage chronograph, but I wouldn't recommend it for beginners, as service and part replacements for these watches are costly and sometimes hard to find. But of course, how can you refuse a vintage Panda dial by Breitling? But along with chronographs, there are many other complications that you might find interesting when buying vintage watches, such as alarm functions, like the one you see in the Vulcan Cricket, or calendar watches with date displays and moon phase complications. All in all, it's these rare, hard-to-find pieces that make collecting vintage watches so enjoyable. In my opinion, you can't go wrong with a solid dress piece. 2 hands, sweeping seconds, such as a classic Longines. It's not hard to find a quality piece that's elegant and clean, but that's still within your budget. Whether it's a Longines, a Zenith, or the classic Omega Seamaster. For those of us who love vintage watches, it's not always about the brands. It's the story behind the piece, and the story we ourselves attach to it. So whether you're buying a vintage Rolex or a vintage Bulova, buy what you like and know what you're buying. And of course, don't forget to have fun. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.